Hello and welcome back to TVP World. These are World Talks and I'm your host, Alex Simlinsky. Now, Russia has announced the expulsion of 3 Polish diplomats and the closure of Poland's consulate general in St. Petersburg as a direct response to Poland's decision to shut down the Russian consulate general in Poznań. Relations between Russia and Poland have been marked by increasing hostility in recent years. The Russian ministry accused Polish authorities of dismantling the decades-old framework of cooperation between the two countries. We will talk about various aspects of hybrid warfare on the part of the Russian government with our guest. And joining us for that, we have Koreva, Director, Warsaw Office of the Atlantic Council. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
So now, how do you rate the condition of Polish-Russian relations? Can we say that the state is so bad that they just can't get any worse?
Well, sure, things can get worse, but I mean, there is a clear reason for why we are here. Obviously, Poland, like no other country in Europe, has stood up for Ukraine, for Ukraine's defense and for their rights to live as a free country with territorial integrity and sovereignty and all these other things. I mean, Poland led the charge for support, for gathering support for Ukraine early on from day one, and has been continuing to do that even when there wasn't, of course, the war started under one government. There's a different government, but there's unity and consensus in Poland on that. And for a long time, even before that, Poland has warned of the growing threat that's coming from Russia. I mean, that's the reason why we arrived here, why the relations are in a bad situation. I mean, all of the blame for this lies squarely with Russia. Russia cannot invade other countries in Europe, in this case, a neighboring country of Poland. And not just invade, but I mean, if you look at the whole thing, I mean, the rhetoric that's coming out of Russia on Ukraine, and not just Ukraine, many other countries, is basically as if someone would have dug up the worst elements of the 1940s. Poles remember this very well. They know very well what it is that we're dealing with here. The Russian war against Ukraine is not just about Ukraine. It is about reshaping the entire security order in Europe. We know this from the proposals that were sent by the Russians in December of 2021, shortly before the open aggression happened, which basically called for rolling back NATO to pre-1997, which is, of course, before Poland got to join. So why do the Russians expect anything else than the relationship to be bad at this point?
Now, I have to ask, because this was going to be one of my questions. You have, of course, given reasons, but I'm wondering, are there any more reasons? Because when it comes to European Union countries, it looks like Poland is the main focus of Russian diplomatic attacks and not only sabotage and a symbol of Russian hostility towards an EU country. So why is Russia so focused on Poland?
Because Poland is doing an excellent job of building broad coalitions in order to maintain a robust support for Ukraine. We've seen ever since the U.S. election, there's been more growing, let's put it, anxiety in Europe over which direction the United States is going to take. And Poland is handling this very well, I think, on many fronts. I mean, support for Ukraine is one thing, but also look at the spending on defense in Poland of 4%. That is a role model for the rest of NATO, and this is something that the incoming U.S. administration has emphasized on many occasions. There's a good relationship between Poland and President Duda and President Trump, and even though the Polish government is from a different side than President Duda, it seems to be working. Prime Minister Tusk and President Duda seem to be in cooperation on this very matter, which is very good. And also, again, like Poland has done many. A lot of diplomatic outreach to other countries in Europe who share their view of the need to safeguard European security from the Russian threat. I'm thinking of the Scandinavian countries, the Baltic countries, Czech Republic, Romania. We'll see what happens there right now. But anyway, that's also what Minister Radoslaw Sikorski called them forward-leaning allies. The United Kingdom is another example. So we're looking at Poland is doing a lot right now that, of course, is beneficial for the security of Ukraine and Europe, and which is not what Russia wants, obviously. So it is not. Poland is not only a country that doesn't buy into the Russian propaganda on Ukraine, but is also actively working, to counter this threat that's coming from Russia right now.
Mm-hmm. So now, when it comes to this closure of the Polish consulate in St. Petersburg, we heard Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski say that we accept it with dignified indifference. Now, people have been charged in Poland on suspicion of sabotage on behalf of the Kremlin. Do you think, can we expect Russia to intensify its sabotage and diversion actions in Poland?
Unfortunately, in the short run, probably so. This is, again, because Russia fears NATO and Article 4. Russia does not want to fight with NATO because they know that they will very likely lose. So what they're trying to do is to do everything that basically goes under the level of Article 5, right? And that includes sabotaging campaigns. And we've seen this for quite a long time, unfortunately. I mean, we've seen there's been a huge increase in cyber attacks, of course, disinformation. And now they're kind of dialing this up. And they're doing that because Russia is not in a good situation right now in this war. The Russian economy is doing very badly. The Russians are doing everything they can to try to cover it up. But it's looking really, really bad. So they basically are trying to wear down the Western support for Ukraine in any ways that they can do it in. And obviously these kinds of sabotage campaigns are intended to create a sense in the country that that this isn't worth it, that we shouldn't just we should try to wrap this up with a quick deal or something like that. But of course most Poles, I think, understand that that's not in the cards, because if you let Putin get away with what he's doing in Ukraine, unfortunately Poland might be next.
Mm-hmm. So now what about, how should, because from what I garner what you're saying, Putin is, well, he's in such, let's say, bad shape, the economy and the situation, of course, not going the way that he'd want it to go. So how important is it now that, the West and also, of course, our region stay united? And, is there anything, should Poland prepare maybe somehow for, for, like you said, maybe some expected sabotage acts to take place here?
Well, sure. I think, yes, we need to be prepared as a society. But the important thing here is that, a robust country with resilience like Poland is at the end of the day, in where broadly society understands the problem, this is something that is manageable, right? It's a problem, yes, but it can be managed. That goes for other countries as well, but I think Poland is in a particularly good shape of doing it. Another example was, of course, the wave of migrants coming across the border with Belarus. That's another example of a Russian hybrid operation. And I think the Polish government and the Polish society handled that fairly well. It's like, okay, there's a problem, we need to reinforce the border, so we'll just do it, right? We're not going to, give in to that kind of, it's a form of warfare from the Russian side. Now, in terms of more of the big picture on Ukraine, we are hearing a lot of talk of what the new U.S. administration is going to do with some sort of trying to with the negotiations with Russia. I think what Poland and the European countries need to be prepared to do is to say that we are prepared to send European troops, a lot of European troops, to Ukraine as part of securing the any kind of, if there is going to be an agreement, as part of securing the, making sure that the agreement stands. Because right now in the United States, there's no appetite for sending massive amounts of Americans to Europe at this time. They really want to see, the new administration wants to see Europe stepping up and doing that. And I think Poland is, considering the massive investments that we have done in the defense of this country, that we're in a very good shape. It is important, though, that the Poles be clear with the Americans that, in order for that to work, obviously it has to be a broad, it's not just Poland, right? You might need Brits, French, maybe even German, other countries that are willing, Nordic, Baltic, right, to show that this is a broad effort. But there has to be American component in terms of like missile defense, space, intelligence, which is something that just the Europeans don't have at this time, in order for this whole thing to work, and also show the Russians that the Americans have skin in the game, because at the end of the day, that's what Russians are really going to respect.
All right, and now just very briefly, because we're going to have to wrap it up soon, do you think, is there a chance for the Polish-Russian relations to become better, some kind of rapprochement maybe in the near future, and under what conditions would you see that happening? Not
under the Putin regime, no. I mean, it's not just about Putin. Russia has dug itself into an extremely deep hole right now. The entire society is sick, you could really say, with the way, because it's not just, Putin is a product of Russia, and this war, unfortunately, there is, if not broad-based support, there's acceptance for it in Russia, and that's something that the Russians are going to have to change, because otherwise there is no way that they're going to have a normal relationship with their neighbors. Certainly not.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Aaron Koreva, Director, Warsaw Office, Atlantic Council, thank you very much for speaking us here on TVP World.
Thank you.
And with that, we conclude this edition of the World Talks. But as always, do stay tuned to TVP World for more breaking news, updates, and commentary. Thanks for watching.